I had no idea that this thing existed. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Today, we are continuing our deep dive into the Atari 50 compilation disc. It has all sorts of amazing video game history in it, and I wanted to share it with you guys and react to it as we watch it. We covered all the way up into the release of Atari in the last video. If you haven't seen it, make sure you guys go watch that. I mean, it was mind-blowing to learn some of the things in there. I fully encourage you to check that out. Today, we're going to start at the pinball section of Atari's history and make our way through the home console market of the early 80s. If you are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and, of course, the thumbs up button. We're going for 500 thumbs up. I'm trying to release a new video every day this week while the Atari 50 is coming out. Listen, like I said in the first video, I've never been a huge fan of the original Atari games, but I am a huge fan of Atari's history. So let's check it out. Let's get into this thing and learn more about this, because I am so blown away by what's going on with this. By the way, if you would like to purchase this, you can. There's a link down below. I am not sponsored by this, but I do have an Amazon referral link, which if you buy it, I'll make like $1 off it. So, you know, hey, that'd be great. The link is down in the description as well as the comments below. So let's get into this. It is the Atari pinball area. Do you know Atari did pinball? I didn't. In 1975, Atari launched a pinball division and with the aim of innovating on the still popular game. Atari built more expensive machines with advanced computer hardware and larger playfields, but the new technology was not reliable. Atari quickly left the pinball business, but not before producing some interesting tables. So here's a video on it talking about Eugene Jarvis, who would go on to create video games hits like Defender, joined Atari in 1977. Eugene Jarvis, by the way, if you were to put together like a Mount Rushmore of video game developers, especially the classic video games, Eugene Jarvis would probably be right around the top 4. I mean, this guy created some of the most iconic games in video game history. Joined Atari in 1977 to program with the processors that controlled its new pinball games. What he found was a company that, in his view, was making all the wrong decisions about pinball design. Isn't that amazing that this guy comes in, he's like, you're doing this all wrong. I think that's amazing stuff. Let's check it out.
I mean, Atari really, why were they in the pinball business? You know, here they had this tiger by the tail of video games, you know, just this supernova of creativity and possibilities. And, you know, they were nailing it left and right, creating new genres every other week. Why would you mess around with pinball? You could tell our games were just not working, you know, and due to reliability, poor engineering, you know, thermal issues, issues of the games just falling apart, poor hardware design. You know, I could see the writing was on the wall that we were going to go down. I mean,
that's pretty fascinating to think about. The idea that, number one, he comes in, he's like, why would you even want to deal with this, you know, antiquated technology at the time? You have this new, amazing technology of playing games on TV, and you want to play this like analog version with a ball, and you know, like why would you want to do that? And I also understand why I would imagine Nolan Bushnell wanted to get into it, was because, you know, you've got this great thing working here, so you want to take a step to the left over here or a step to the right and also do amusement games. It's, you know, sometimes in business you got to take chances, and that's exactly what he's doing. But it was interesting that the idea that like, oh, we're going to quickly back away because we realize this is not right for us.
The pinball division was just a massive disaster. I mean, it was, you know, it's kind of the, you know, kind of the hubris of, you know, I guess Silicon Valley. Even in that era, you know, it was like, oh, these morons in Chicago, they make these crappy old games, you know, like, you know, we're going to redesign everything. We're going to put the display down in the bottom. We're going to, you know, put the boards, you know, underneath the play field so all the crap falls in and shorts out the things. And I mean, it was really horrific design, and they caught on fire. And, the solenoids, they used this thing called rotary solenoids, which burned up and the screws fell out. And, you know, it was kind of a, you know, just a complete disaster as far as like design and also testing. And
that's really funny to think about. What he said there was the hubris of Silicon Valley looking at these idiots from Chicago and be like, yeah, we can do it better. I mean, come on. But what you don't realize is that there's been years and years of work done to perfect what a pinball machine looked like at the time. and then they're like, yeah, we're just going to change the whole thing, put things in different places, and we're going to make it better. And all the guys in Chicago are like, you guys are idiots. What are you thinking? And you know what? They proved to be right.
So there was a lot of games that caught on fire in their early days. So, but they made a lot of money when they were working. You know, I think the programming was awesome because I did it. You know.
Well, talking about hubris right there. That's awesome. That's really funny to think about. I legitimately didn't even know that Atari went into the pinball division. So that's what's really exciting about going in and checking this out, is that I legitimately didn't know that it existed. But we're gonna go through and I did a quick preview, as once again that we're going through Atari's history here, and there are a few other parts here where it talks about specific games, and it gets into one game in particular. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about Asteroids, because Asteroids was something that I was really fascinated by. But it goes into which game was it? I think it's Millipede. Is it Millipede? There's one of these games in here that really kind of gives you a full rundown of what with separate videos and stuff. But I don't know. This one. This is the holographic design. Yeah, there we go. Okay, because we'll get into the game in particular. It gets into in just a little bit. Sorry, I totally skipped this because I previewed this. Didn't watch the videos though. I want to save that for you guys. But this is really interesting. Cosmos, the holographic handheld, a handheld gaming device in 1981. Let alone that, a holographic handheld device. In January 1981, Atari announced that it would release Cosmos, a handheld gaming system in which each game would be displayed atop a custom hologram image. Just think about that. This is how many years? I don't know, 6-7 years before the Game Boy existed? 87, 88. This is 1981, and they're already realizing that people want to take these games on the go. And not just on the go, but a holographic design. That's crazy to think about even today. The game's graphics were made up of simple LED lights, but the holograms provided a dynamic, realistic backdrop. Atari never released the Cosmos. And guess what? We got a video about it. Oh, baby. Let's get into this. I am excited. All right. If you guys are excited, once again, hit the thumbs up button. And of course, if you made it this far, hit the subscribe button, because this is, cool.
When was this? 1980, 81, that time frame. Prior to Ray Kassar's emergence, I was part of the executive staff, and Nolan, Joe, I, Steve Bristow, Gil, Dennis Groth, finance, we were all friends and no politics and all that, and we all worked together and part of the team that it was great. Once Ray took over, nope, it was all a closed office, and he met with all his hires from Procter & Gamble, and
Ugh.
So I realized, okay, I'm out of this. I'm either going to have to quit, because Nolan had gone, Joe had gone, Lipkin, everybody had gone. I figured, well, I'll go back. This is my baby. I'm going to do it one more time. And we had used holography. We couldn't keep secrets at Atari. We're just no good at it. So we decided the best thing to do was put out disinformation. So one of the best ones was, the next coin-op game's going to have holography in it. It was like, what the hell's that? I knew what it was.
I don't even know what I'm guessing holography. I've never heard the term holography until literally right now. I've never heard holography before. I'm cultured.
That's good, having, been to college and studied this physics and stuff. But that was just, but anyway, I decided, well, let's do something in holography. Maybe there's something there. I'll take it. Sounds hard, sounds interesting. I know a little bit about it. And we proceeded to explore holography and what could be done, and came up with a holographic toy that basically sold it to Ray, saying, how would you like, because the cartridge video game business seemed to be very good, how would you like to have a system where the cartridge, it's a cartridge-based system, but the cartridges are half the cost of, everything is half the cost of the VCS. And, hey, go ahead. It were very simple. They were nothing more than an LED, a simple LED game, the handheld LED game in those days. The only difference was we had a hologram with two images on it. You look through this box, and there were 2 lamps inside, and when you'd crash a spaceship, you'd see a hologram of a spaceship crashing.
That looks awesome. And I know that it doesn't look as, I'm positive that it would not look as good as what you're seeing on screen. But that is legitimately mind-blowing how cool that looks. I had no idea that this thing existed. I mean, that looks pretty freaking cool, man. It looks very three-dimensional. That's neat.
And but you could look through this half-metallized Mylar and play a Space Invader game or something like that.
What?
We did all the work, put everything together, got a chip designed, package designed, and at the end, Ray wouldn't. We even took it to the toy fair or the consumer. And marketing wouldn't show it, wouldn't back it up, and we did it ourselves, engineering, and we think we sold 100,000 of them, but Ray would not release it, just wouldn't do it. And I realized that was it. They're not going to release that. I mean, this is now in a time when if it failed, you wouldn't even notice it. It wouldn't be a pimple on the balance sheet, but they were afraid to do it. Back when the whole company was, we're sure we'd do it. So that was the end of my career at Atari.
Wow, that is crazy to think about. That like they created this entire product, readied out, that sold 100,000 units, and their CEO was like, "No, we're not going to take that risk." My God, are you kidding me? The electric games of tomorrow, available today. 3-dimension lifelike holographic effects. I've never seen one of those. I didn't even know this thing exists. The Cosmos. Surely, like a prototype version of this has to be available. And how is this not a holy grail when it comes to a video game item? There's so much of this stuff that is just lost in history. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things about learning about these things. I didn't even know this existed. What? Crazy. Coming out, the future of Atari. Wow. That is really cool. All right. So that's all the videos in the arcade origins. Now let's take a look at the birth of the console. Like I said, I did a quick glance through here. There's just a couple of videos. We're gonna make our way through this entire birth of the consoles area. So I appreciate you guys sticking. If you guys have made it this far, hit the thumbs up button and of course subscribe if I can mention that one more time. And once again, I fully encourage you to go pick this up. The Atari 50, if you're a fan of this old stuff, just for this, it's $40. Like, man, what a great document. I am blown away by the forethought to save everything, to save all of this, just the documenting of this history. I'm going to be straight up honest with you. There were times at Screw Attack where we were running out of hard drive space and we just deleted videos. No forethought at all. No forethought, you know? But nowadays, you think about that, you got to make sure you catalog everything. Jeez Louise. All right, let's get into the VCS, the Video Computer System. Let's go read this. In September 1977, Atari launched the Video Computer System, later known as the 2600. It was part of the new wave of game consoles, which had no games built in, but stored them separately on ROM cartridges. Technologically superiority didn't come cheap. The VCS launched at $199, about $950 in 2022. Could you imagine? Could you imagine going to the store right now and buying your PlayStation 5 for $950? Could you imagine the outrage? I've talked about this before. Video games now are cheaper than they've ever been. And people make a big deal out of like God of War being $70. Like, that's insanely cheap for the entertainment that you get out of it. And people, I mean, this is just mind-blowing to think about. $950. All right, let's check this out. What is a VCS? In this video feature, Atari legend VCS programmers Howard Scott Warshaw and David Crane describe the impact of the Atari video computer system in their own words. All right.
On the simplest level, what the VCS, the Atari 2600, what that is, it's a combination of plastic and computer chips that enables you to play a video game, an interactive video game on your home television, which is something that never really happened before.
If you're making an arcade game, it begins as a hardware project. If you need something more in the hardware, just put it in the hardware and you can use it in your game. The Atari 2600, we didn't have that luxury. The game was already in Grandma's house. It was already hooked up to her TV. And all we could do is make a different cartridge, sell that to the person, he plugs it in.
Look at the options on there. The idea of the TV type of color versus black and white. You see that over there? This is like crazy to see. Game select, game reset, pop the game in there. If you ever had a cartridge like this, man, let me know, because I had those. I had a handful. I don't know if I ever had Yar's Revenge, but I remember having this console, or at least seeing it around. I don't know if I actually played this console growing up, but maybe I'm wrong. Pretty sure I have. But those cartridges sure do look familiar from in the back regions of my brain, pulling this stuff out. It's crazy.
It was the thing that made video games a worldwide phenomenon.
True.
And all it is it's a box that enables you to play an interactive game on your TV. But on a cultural level, that's such a huge thing to do, because there were two things that achieved that changed the world, literally changed the world. One is it put computers in homes at a time where IBM only had about 10,000 PCs sold altogether.
Look at the advertising here. This is not a toy. That's pretty crazy. I mean, like, yeah, this is fun, but this ain't a toy. This is serious stuff. Atari's video computer system is superior to any other system because it gives your customers more games to play and better games to play. That is really cool.
Atari had millions of units installed, and every one of those was a computer in the home. The other thing it did was it created an interactive medium with television, which was always a passive medium.
What's crazy is I'm reading this as it goes. It says at the top, it says, we're the Atari video game computer system. Remember Pong? Look, I think we all know time moves a little bit faster. Not physically faster, but with the way things move with our smartphones and everything. This is in the 70s, where you would get news you would get your news from news at the end of the day, and there was 3 or 4 channels on TV. You had your NBC and your ABC and your CBS, and then some sort of UHF channel that was local or whatever. But even then, this is in the late 70s going into the 80s, and they're saying, remember Pong? Like, it wasn't that long ago, and Pong was still relatively new, this idea. And they're still, well, remember it? Hey, just that's really interesting to think about the marketing attached to that. Remember that thing? It wasn't that long ago.
Before video games, people were just zombies sitting on the couch watching TV. But video games turned people into zombies jumping up and down on the couch yelling at the TV.
And
that was an
interesting way to talk about your consumer.
And I think that was huge in terms of taking people from a passive state to an active state. And we're still learning the implications of that.
What an interesting, you look at how the different color of the boxes, how they were, like, this is your lineup of games over here. And they all have, you wonder if the coloring code had anything to do with, I don't see any, we have an Olympics up here. We have a sport down here. I was thinking like the Olympics were all, or the sport games were all yellow, but no. So this idea is really, really good in theory. The idea that we're gonna colorize our entire catalog of games. But what happens when you have a game, a new game, and it's not quite yellow, but not quite green? You got to keep shifting the colors on it. Interesting. Wow, that's pretty cool to see. All right, so it goes through the games here. It talks about the different games that were released. Not a whole lot of videos. Oh, you know what? Here's a video here. We'll check this out. From arcade to home, and then I think there's a couple more videos to go. This video is going to be a little bit longer. I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end because it is well worth the wait watching these things. Hopefully, you guys feel smarter than I do, or smarter than you did when you started. Because I know I definitely feel more video game intelligent. I fully intend on making my way through this entire catalog. So once again, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. All right, so from arcade to home, the VCS version of a popular game could be a big hit, but bringing a coin-operated game to the lower-powered home machine was easier said than done. Game designers David Crane, Gary Kitchen, and Todd Fry explained why porting an arcade game was an impossible challenge, but one they gladly took on. Love it. This is so... God, I'm having so much fun with this.
The entire reason that Atari created the Atari 2600 home console was to put their arcade hits into the home. If we can sell home versions of our arcade hit games into the home, we can sell millions of them instead of just take quarters from the thousands of people who go to arcades. And so the hardware was designed to make it possible to play Tank and Pong.
Yes.
That's about all that they did in the hardware.
So the distinction is this. Coin.
Ooh, he made Pac-Man for the 2600. That's like notoriously a very bad version of Pac-Man.
Gets to use more expensive hardware. They get to use tons and tons of hardware, and they get to refresh their hardware all the time.
I had played an Outlaw-like game in the arcade. I think it was Midway. And you know, I was just told to make a game, so I said, well, here's an idea, two guys shooting at each other, and so I made that game. My goal is to try to make it like the arcade game.
At the end of the day, it's essentially, it's more or less a version of Pong. Just you just don't want to get hit by the ball, and there's something in the middle of it. That's funny.
So I could look at the arcade game and say, this is what it has to do. There really wasn't any need for me to have communication with the arcade guys. I'm particularly proud of the Atari 2600 Canyon Bomber because it also has the Atari arcade game Depth Charge in it. So it turns out that in a 2K byte Atari 2600 cartridge, I simulated both Canyon Bomber and Depth Charge, which were probably $3,000 arcade game hardware.
When I was young, when I was little, I remember there was this drugstore, and in their comic book rack, they had these abridged versions of great literature. You'd read it, and it was the whole story of Treasure Island. War and Peace, a comic book. But that whole notion of an abridged version, that is what was going to happen.
That's pretty fascinating to think about because that actually still happens today. You take the abridged version of these old things. My daughter is really big on the graphic novel abridged versions of classic tales. And you wonder, who's still reading these classic tales in their entirety, these 300 and 400 page stories, when you can just read the graphic novel, the comic book version of it, you know, in 50 pages, and it's really pretty to look at too. There's pictures. Whoa.
When I did Donkey Kong, I had, not surprisingly, absolutely no contact with Nintendo. Coleco was able to get me a machine. So I had a machine that I could play and look at, and I had already played the game. And like David said, with Canyon Bomber, the game is the spec. Frankly, the hardware is so different in its capabilities that I can't think of any value I would have had getting in touch with anybody at Nintendo. It's like talking to the guy who created the Porsche Carrera about making a bicycle. I mean, it's like there's not a lot there.
So is he making the Porsche Carrera or is he making the bicycle? I think that's really interesting. The idea that Nintendo didn't have any contact at all, when it came to the Atari 2600 port of their game. What?
Not a lot you're going to tell me. Here's this masterpiece and do it on this toaster. You know? And I was young enough and stupid enough to not be intimidated. And I wasn't because I was just a kid. And I was like, no big deal.
Isn't that amazing? The idea of there's so much when it comes to the saying ignorance is bliss, right? And my daughters recently learned the expression of your mouth being bigger than your stomach, or you know the idea that you see all the food, you eat it all, and then you have too much food and you end up having a stomach ache. It's kind of the exact same idea here with with Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and all these classic games. It's just really, really cool to think about. Let's go ahead and keep going just a little bit longer. There's a few things about the programming on the on this, and I think this is where we're going to stop because there are a few videos in particular about which game is it? There's one game in particular. Maybe I totally missed it. I think I did, but we'll just kind of go there, finish up on the programming for it, and we'll wrap it up there. But I will continue. Once again, there's a highs and lows, dawn of the PCs in 1990s and beyond. I will cover all this on my channel, assuming that I don't get a copyright flag for this stuff. But I think this is super important for you guys to see. And once again, I fully encourage you to go buy this collection for yourself because there's so much that we have not even taken a close look at here that if you are a fan of video game history, you are going to love this stuff. So let's go and check out this last video here about programming being so difficult. It says the designers of the VCS thought it would be obsolete quickly. Wow. After all, it was only intended to play tank and Pong. 4 years later, it was more popular than ever, and game designers had to keep squeezing more out of it. In this video, several game designers discuss why Atari VCS programming was so uniquely challenging, because they were dealing with no memory at all. Just crazy to think about. Oh, here's a pretty long video. I like these. It's hard.
So one of the first questions they asked me at Atari was, what do you want to work on? So I just said to him, I said, what's the dirtiest, most basic elemental system that you have? And he goes, oh, well, that's the VCS. And I said, well, that's where I want to start.
I mean, the constraints on the programmers were worse than I ever even imagined were.
That's funny. So he went in and this is the demake of Halo 2600. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I fully encourage you to check that out. You just Google or just YouTube Halo 2600.
Possible.
2600 doesn't draw a screen. It doesn't draw anything. What it does is it has these little logic devices, these counters and shift registers that say this is the start of the screen, this is the left side of the screen. The electron beam is moving to the right. I'm going to count. I know how fast the electron beam is moving. I'm going to count until the electron beam is somewhere on the screen, and then I'm going to change the color on the screen for a little itsy bit.
There's only one console where you have to think about the electron gun moving across the screen and what machine cycle you're on and when you can show stuff on the screen. That's such a fun and unique and annoying challenge that it really hooks you.
To these guys, this sounds way too... I am so in awe by what these guys have been able to were able to develop and are still developing. You see the homebrew development of this. It's just insane to me to think about. The video you're watching is exponentially longer, exponentially bigger, not by a little bit, like not by a lot of bit, by infinite amount than any of the size of these games. It's crazy. The amount of data streaming through your phone right now as it's tracking in your pocket or watching me on your phone, it just dwarfs the data that went into making one of these games.
The most fun I've ever had making a game. What do you say, Dave?
Fun might not be the word. It is the most challenging thing you could do. When we were doing it at Atari and at Activision, there were fewer than 100 people in the world who could do what we were doing. And that in itself was, very positive, very uplifting. It's really a sense of accomplishment. If you can create something that, a million people love on this horribly limited piece of hardware, you've created something. You have a sense of accomplishment.
And there are very few things more technical challenging than trying to get a game out of the VCS in the first place, because the VCS is a very technically limited machine. It sounds like a fabulous thing, and when it first came out, it was, because people had never seen anything like it.
I don't know if other people are as rewarded by it, but you're overcoming tremendous challenges. There's nothing that's easy to do on the 2600. And you're winning. I love winning.
That's interesting to think about, the idea that how technically impossible it was to create these games. And they look back on it being like, man, we were idiots for trying that. But we did it, And the idea that less than 100 people were creating at the time and coding these things. I mean, as he said, he likes winning. I'm sure all these guys have done very well for themselves. And think of the stories these guys have, golly, that aren't even covered on this compilation disc. It's crazy.
And the other thing that's fun about playing them still is that they're all 60 frames a second. They have to hit that or the screen won't draw, you know? So they're all even much better than I think consoles that came out a few years afterwards. They all feel really fast when you play them. No Atari game has any sort of lag or anything because they had no option to have lag.
It's like when today, in hindsight, people criticize the first screen of Donkey Kong on the 2600. When I finished that screen, I thought it was a miracle. And you get people on Facebook today saying it's the biggest piece of junk I ever saw. You just have to understand the perspective of where you were at the time.
The programmers that worked with that machine were magicians.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. And man, I love it. I am so fascinated by this. I will continue this, and I continue. Like I'm in this. This is the best movie I've seen in a long time, which I think is really, really cool. Once again, you can pick this up for yourself. There's a link to Amazon. It's a referral link. I encourage you to check it out. I'm not sponsored by this. I just thought that I'd enjoy this, so you would too. Come back tomorrow. I'm going to release a new one. This is very quickly turning into Atari 50 week on my channel. It's hot. It's new. I thought you'd be interested. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button and, of course, the thumbs up button. Let's get to that 500. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode as we dive deep into the highs and lows. Look, there it is. The highs and lows. Mañana.